A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You're with me now, Dr. Muhammad Husni Mohd Amin, Fellow at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies, KIAS, on Radio IKIM program, Great Works of the Muslim World. Our returning guest today is Dr. Muhammad Ikhwan Azlan from Selangor International Islamic University, UIS. He is joining us today to talk about the book Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin by Tan Sri Professor Dr. Syed Muhammad Naquib al-Attas, first published in 2001 and recently published in Jawi. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Ikhwan.
Thank you, Dr. Husni. Thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Very good. So, okay, now, so Dr. Ikhwan, maybe you could briefly introduce to us, to the viewers especially and our listeners, who is Tan Sri Professor Dr. Syed Muhammad Naquib al-Attas?
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Listeners and Dr. Husni, thank you for having me to this show. It's always an honor to be asked to introduce a great scholar like Tan Sri Professor Syed Naquib al-Attas, who really requires no introduction actually. He's a most senior scholar of Islam in Malaysia, and has been instrumental to many of the crucial developments of this country, the intellectual and spiritual developments of its people, the Muslims especially, and the larger Muslim community of the world. He's has written many books, many works throughout his entire life actually. Most recently, he published yet another book entitled Islam, the Covenants Fulfilled, just last year, right?
Yes.
And actually delivered 3 public lectures at the age of 90 something, right? So it's quite an inspiration. It's really an inspiration for us to take as a role model.
Yes.
The tirelessness of his efforts to educate and to give advice and to explain what Islam is and as a religion and civilization to Muslims, and particularly to this part of the world, is exemplary. So well, other than that, I think his biography, these are all well documented, and so for listeners who wants to know more about this figure, I guess there are better resources out there to just refer to, and you'll get more details and more than what we can share in this limited amount of time. So I think that I hope it does justice to Prof. al-Attas.
All right. Thank you for that. So, going to the work that we're going to discuss today, which is Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin. If maybe perhaps we want to translate that into something like an epistle for the Muslims, or an epistle for the Muslim peoples. So, what is Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin is all about?
Perhaps the most widely read and recognized work of Prof. Syed Naquib al-Attas is Islam and Secularism.
Yeah.
Although he has written some many other works, but I think Islam and Secularism is the one that received the widest readership. It's written in English, obviously, and was published in the 70s and then 78, if I'm not mistaken. And if you look at it was first published in 1978. If you look at the preface, the author's note in that publication, Prof. al-Attas actually mentioned, and I quote, "The present book is a development of ideas contained in the many paragraphs of another book in Malay entitled Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin, which I wrote and completed during the first few months of 1974. That was 50 years ago. Today is 2024, right?
Yeah.
So due to many circumstances which demanded my attention at home and abroad, however, the Risalah has not yet been sent to the press. So this Risalah eventually was published in 2001, the first publication, and with the strong suggestion by Professor Wan Muhammad Nuwan Daud lah, and others. So Islam and secularism is probably considered his great work.
A seminal work at that.
A seminal work. People recognize him for that. And in fact, one of the chapters in Islam and secularism, the chapter on de-Westernization of knowledge, received recognition by Kranlana Foundation in Australia as one of the powerful ideas of the age. So these are very significant recognitions, and if you read them, and you can sense the originality and the power of the ideas contained therein. And we in Malaysia, in this part of the world, sometimes we feel we have this kind of inferiority complex towards works written in by the West, and in Western languages, in English particular, and we see those works as representative of the intellectual, shall we say, spirit of the age, meaning intellectual representative of the age. I mean, it's a language of science. It's a language where by which knowledge is spread and disseminated, and it's not uncommon to in normal in usual conversations, and we find we find questions like what are the contributions of the Malay language, for instance, and in terms of science, in terms of intellectual contributions, and then we see this work, Islam and Secularism, which is recognized, and then Prof. Al-Attas is saying that this is based on another work written in the Malay language. So if this is not significant as to the upliftment of our tradition and our culture and our heritage, and I don't know what is, right? Meaning the dissemination of the ideas was done through the English language, but the original contents and the germination of the ideas was originally formulated in the Malay language. So sometimes we feel that perhaps we've missed the train, or we've missed the junction, that perhaps we have to catch up, and we have to write in English and just to be at par and to be in the race, so to speak, and to the point that we neglect the development of our own language. Because if we don't use our language to express high ideas, deep ideas, and our deepest thoughts, and to engage with contemporary problems, to engage with the most pertinent intellectual and spiritual problems of the age, then it's a logical conclusion that the language will eventually deteriorate into something that is only usable to in the marketplace, for instance. But
I think it can die off and become another dead language, like some other, or even confined to just ritual. And we are not even using Malay.
We're not even using Malay, and I believe for very good reasons. I trust the IKIM program has their own objectives, right? But anyway, I mean, that just shows that there's still a lot of work to be done. I share to you with and the viewers one anecdote, an experience. Our friend from Belgium, Ahmed. Sorry for mentioning name. Because he read Islam and Secularism, he noticed that first paragraph, that note that Prof. Al-Attas mentioned about this Risalah, and so he came to Malaysia. Well, he came to Malaysia many times, and one of the occasion he was with me in Cassis, and he was asking me about this Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin. I can't remember what year was that. I believe it was 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And then, oh, so this is just another work. This is not another work of Prof, written in the Malay language. And we are working at that time, Academy Jawi Malaysia,
Yes.
this institute that publishes, that recently published this work in Jawi, was just beginning through Shukri lah, to the initiative of our friend Shukri Muhammad Shukri Rosli. He was just beginning this initiative to to transcribe this work in Jawi, because
Yes.
his establishment is all about Jawi, all about reviving Jawi and the classical Jawi. And so I shared this information at that time, was private lah, information with Ahmad, because it was just starting off. That we are working on rewriting this in Jawi, and then Ahmad gave me this look. That's not helpful, because I'd like you to translate this into English.
Yeah.
If you translate, I mean, it's already in Malay, and then you're moving even further
Yeah.
inland into the Malay world, so to speak. But
Maybe he thought that it's making the work more obscure.
yeah, it's more inaccessible to him.
Yeah.
And I told him, if you want, well, the contents is already in English, in the form of Islam and secularism.
Yeah.
And that's what he asked me to, can you just read for me a few lines? So I read to him a few lines. I just impromptu translate him into English, and his reaction was, this is something else. It's the same, but it's not the same. But Prof. al-Attas, I mean, we were informed that Prof. al-Attas himself didn't allow for this work to be translated into English. And in fact, if you, well, I'm sure you've read this many times, and you would, anyone read who has read this work would notice that the style and the temperament is very different from Islam and secularism. Of course, you can identify similar ideas, and you can identify the same message, the similar message, but the tone, the feeling and the gravity of the message, the way it was formulated is different. It puts you in a different mood, so to speak, in a different state. It is much more personal. Islam and secularism, it's more academic. You see lots of footnotes. If you want to scour for resources, and if you want to do the archaeology of ideas, you can read Islam and secularism and go through the footnotes. And it'll walk you through amongst the most important works in philosophy and history and Islamic thought. Whereas in Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin, there's no footnotes. There's no footnotes. And the book itself is like a very long essay. In fact, in all the publications, Prof. Attas, in the preface of the book, Prof. Attas mentioned that it is actually a verbal transcription.
A dictation from a dictation.
A dictation. And he was not giving a mass lecture, but he was speaking to his secretary, and his secretary was typing his words. So
I think in the foreword he says that it is a dictation that was transcribed into simple writing and then typed back by his secretary back then. When he was serving as a lecturer at the University Kebangsaan Malaysia, the secretary was Cik Roslin Hamzah. That was when he was the holder of the languages and literature, Malay literature, and also the founding director of Institut Bahasa Kesusasteraan and Kebudayaan Melayu. There was he started doing this in 1973.
73.
Yes.
Yeah,
about the same time that I think he was writing Islam and Secularism or having it published, but he didn't think of publishing Risalah until 2001. I think that is a good 27 years.
Exactly. and he explained also the what was his thoughts, his reasons for that, and he felt that the audiences were not ready for
Yeah.
such message. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, even this is one thing that fascinates me in today's academic world. We're so hung up with trying to be original, and trying to be up to date, and trying
Yeah.
to catch up. Our references should be at most 5 years, and the recent 5 years, and beyond that is obsolete or outdated. But at the same time, I mean, as an academic yourself, man, knowledge is something that is quite permanent. Ideas, they last. Good ideas, powerful ideas, they last for a long time, which is why uh, all the ancient philosophers, they're still being read and studied,
Mhm.
and to this
Mhm.
day, because
Mhm.
the universal ideas, especially, and this is what should concern us in academia. Meaning, we should discuss and propagate and explain and teach and do research upon things of universal value. And things of
Yeah.
universal value, they don't have an expiry date. So a work like this, being dictated 51 years ago, is still very much relevant today. In fact, in my humble opinion, I think it is still understudied. It is not
Mhm.
yet really. It has not seeped through really deep into our in the public consciousness.
Mhm.
I mean, some of it has gone has been propagated and publicized, but I think some of the ideas is still in the world of academic and enthusiasts, and close circles who are familiar with his ideas. But at the same time, the contents of the work speaks to the core of our condition,
Yeah.
our historical condition, the challenges of the age, and it is I think it is even more obvious now that these are the challenges that we face. In 70s, I think, if I understand our history correctly, if I imagine them correctly, I was not born yet in the 70s, but if I understand how the situation was like at that
Yeah.
time, because we were just gaining independence, and of course we need to build our country, and universities were established, and a lot of things are in the formative stage. uh, yeah, we need there's a certain urgency to get it right, just to get it in order. And the template that we have is a Western template, and
Yeah.
then the institutional template that we have is the ones that we inherited from the British, and the ones that is established in the West, and it works, and we need that. So there's not much room to to have a deep reconsideration of some of the presumptions of those establishments. But now, Alhamdulillah, we are I think, in a better state, in a more calm state. Although well, the world is as such. There's no time in history where people are not being challenged by one thing or another.
Mhm.
We have our challenges today, but I think we are in a state where it is right for us to really think deeply and think through about all these assumptions and presumptions behind all these ideas that has been translated into our institutions, in our practices, in our bureaucracies, in our language, and our temperament as well, the way we see the world, our worldview. I think it has to be done. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, going into the contents of the book, also you said that well, it looks into the challenges that Professor Al-Attas saw starting in the 70s, where he was responding to the challenges of his time, as well as what he foresees to be the uh, coming challenge to the Muslim world. Now, how would you explain the structure of the book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We briefly mentioned just now that it feels like a long essay because it's a
Yeah,
dictation, and
yeah,
so although there's a table of content
yeah.
that but it's not divided into chapters. It's just like an essay and with paragraphs. So there are
Mm-hmm.
24 paragraphs altogether. So
Mm-hmm.
each paragraph is focuses on on one message or one idea. Um, so like a table of content, like mapping up the paragraphs. So if you look at the map of the paragraphs, you don't. It, it's not like
Yeah,
a
I
book.
think you're right when you say that, because compared to Islam and secularism,
Ah,
Islam and secularism has chapters. This book is not
yes.
divided into chapters, but
The
rather paragraphs. But in the
paragraph,
table of content, it talks about what paragraphs, what are the main
main ideas.
discussion. Yes.
Yeah, and although the say on knowledge, faham ilmu,
Yes.
paragraph 15 to 20, within that section, you also have discussion on agama, on the role of prophet, on
Mhm.
the meaning of change.
Yeah.
Meaning that it's although the focus is on that theme, but it contains everything else as well. Whereas in Islam and secularism, the paragraph is very much is book like. The first is the Western Christian background, giving the setting of the modern Western milieu, and then on secularization, and secularism, this concept of secularization is sources, and then on the
Mhm.
meaning of religion, the foundation of ethics and morality, and then the Muslim dilemma and our problems, and then the de-westernization of knowledge, and then after that there's an epilogue. So it follows that format, so it's very systematic. Whereas this, not to say that it's not systematic, but it's just that he's explaining these ideas in its raw, in its raw form, in a deliberative in a deliberative mode.
Mhm.
It's like you're having a conversation. So
Mhm.
when you have a conversation, you can move from one topic to another as you see fit, right? Because sometimes in a conversation, you see how the conversation develops. Although you have the core structure of the ideas is already there within you, but in having a conversation, so you move about. And so the Risalah feels something like that. So you
Mhm.
see, paragraph 1 to 4, persoalan kaum muslimin, the questions, the perennial questions amongst the Muslim, and then followed by masalah kegentingan kaum muslimin, sebab luaran, meaning the external challenges of the Muslims, and then about the West, and then about religion, and then about justice, and then about knowledge, and then about culture and the position of religion, and then about freedom, about morality, and ethics, and then about change, development, and progress, and then about the generation crisis and the generation gap and the identity crisis, and then the position of the Prophet SAW, and on
Mhm.
language, on literature and art, and then on the internal challenges of the Muslims,
Yeah.
and then on the intellect, and then on secular and secularization. The flow is like that. Um, but which is why when reading it gives you a different mood. It's like having a conversation or sitting in a lecture or in a
Mhm.
closed closed room
Mhm.
where listen to the professor deliberating on these ideas.
Mhm.
So that's that, well, we can say lah, the structure of the book.
Yeah, but would you say that is a prose work?
Prose work.
Is it?
Ah, that's very interesting because okay, to be honest, I first read this when I believe it was before I before university days.
When
Uh,
was the first time that you first encountered this work?
because my parents bought this when it was published, 2001. They bought this from Istak, and yeah, it's. I think I began reading this when I finished SPM.
Yeah.
And I went to college Mara Banting, so I brought this to my dormitory and I read it, and it took me a long time. I think it took me more than a year to finish, because perhaps we should comment on this as well, because the language is a bit unusual to our modern Malay mentality, and because he and I'm also quite familiar with the classical Jawi Malay, and it has that kind of feeling, although it's not exactly the same. So if you read classical Jawi text, you get a certain, there's a certain style, a certain style, a certain lingo, a certain, even the grammar might be a bit different. It is not the way as we speak and write today in Malay. So it has that feeling, and Prof. Al-Attas's language, but at the same time, it's not the same as well. It's not like the Jawi, the classical Jawi text. It has it's very unique, and because of that, it took me a long time to really just to finish the work. And but there's a feeling of importance. When you read it, although you don't understand 100%, but there's a feeling that this is something serious and important. So even if I don't really I'm not sure what is Prof is trying to say here. I mean, there's a lot of words that I'm not familiar, and the style also, and the way it's being written. It's like sometimes the sequence is a bit it's the opposite. But the second and third reading, like many years later, when you go back to it, it becomes easier, because as you are familiar with his thoughts and you understand his thinking, you're familiar with his thinking. It's less of a the burden for the brain is less now, and so you can focus on the meaning and the message. And so when you can focus on the meaning and message, and the gravitas becomes even more powerful. So that's my experience. But therefore, if anyone amongst the listeners and the viewers, if you find the book to be difficult, do not feel disheartened and do not feel demotivated, because I think it's worth investing your time and energy for it, because the gems that is within the work. I've lost what was the original question? Husni, I'm so sorry.
I was just asking you when was the first time that you encountered the work, but to move on, I think to move on with our next question is that because earlier on we said that it was first published in 2001, and recently it's being published but in Jawi. So maybe you want to talk about the significance of this great work. And this work is great because every time you go back into reading it, you'll find something new. And as you said, as the mind, I think I like to think that the mind is a kind of a muscle that the more that you read, the more it becomes strengthened. And and then that's the thing about like Professor Apasal Ashijang said, that the worldview is an architectonic thing. So the more you read, then the more structure that it contains. Therefore, I think what you said earlier on, and just now, you said that the second time you're reading it, the third time you're reading it, then you understand more, and then the gravitas becomes even more obvious. But but that's not my question. My question is why. I think this is this is related to what Brother Ahmed said, that why are we publishing this again in Jawi? That's the significance of it. Yeah.
All right. I guess the best person to answer this question is our friend Shukri lah, kan? Our
Yeah.
the CEO of Academy Jawa
I
Malaysia.
tried. We tried inviting him to our show, but he's just a tad little bit too shy. So that's why we got you.
Okay, so I'm a second choice lah. I
Not
think
really.
yeah,
It's just
he's very
yeah.
occupied with many things, and alhamdulillah, I'm less occupied. Um, yeah, in fact, you he was there when you invited me to this.
Yeah. Yeah. He was.
And initially you wanted me to talk about some old works on logic like Ibn Sina or
That
or
maybe we can do some other time. But okay,
uh,
why do you think that is significant? Has Shukri
Shukri
told you?
suggested.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is it important in Jawi?
I received that. I'm glad that he made that suggestion because I was not to say burden, but a bit. If you want to proceed this with Ibn Sina and the works on logic, first of all, I feel a bit tired about on this. On those topics because whenever you guys see me, so you always identify logic and this is tiring.
You are the mathematician. All right.
Well, logical works, and 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 also I think it's important to recognize that whenever we talk about great works of our civilization, we always thought of the past,
Yeah.
and true enough, and these are great works, and I believe there are many more great works that has not being serviced or being being talked about. It has not penetrated into our consciousness yet. But Al-Attas himself always reminded us that our civilization is not dead,
Yeah.
and in fact, it's alive and thriving. We may face difficulties, may face challenges, and it's not maybe perhaps this is not the most spectacular period of our history. Nonetheless, the civilization is very much alive. The tradition is very much alive. Its practice, the worldview is clear in the minds and hearts of our learned and our scholars. And perhaps from that point, we have to acknowledge and recognize the works of scholars who are still amongst us, who are
Yes.
living in our midst. And these are his works. These are their works. So Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin is one of them. This is a great work. Sometimes and it's difficult. It's easy to recognize great works of the past because when the person is not there to say anything,
Yeah.
you feel so you have a license to comment on on Ibn Sina, and Ibn Sina is not here to say anything
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. To talk freely about what you like.
But it's more difficult to show recognition and acknowledgement to a living
Yeah.
scholar
Mhm.
because he's here, his students are here, his institutions are here, his family members, and in his community. So the burden of responsibilities is much. Is both carries burden of responsibility, but it's more daunting lah if you want to
All
talk
right.
about the living school. But nonetheless, we have to recognize that this is also amongst the great works. And while we still have these minds, these intellects in our midst, and we have to make full use of them, we need to service them and access them and think about them, work on them as much as we can. And the significance of it being republished in Jawi, I think, okay, one, we've mentioned the significance of it being dictated and transcribed and published in Malay. That is one, and in Malay language, in a very pristine and s- uh, full of style
Yes.
Malay, a very dignified Malay. But Malay language traditionally was expressed through the Jawi script,
Yeah.
and according to Shukri, that is a language altogether. It's not just a script, and it has its own character. So it is a challenge lah, to okay, can we re-express this in Jawi, and if we do, how would it look like? And the
Mhm.
advantage of expressing in classical Jawi is that you maintain the etymology of the origins of many of the terminologies.
Mhm.
So if the word comes from Arabic, it will be extremely obvious when you
Mhm.
write it in Jawi. Whereas
Mhm.
when you write it in the Roman alphabets,
Yeah,
uh,
Roman script. Mhm.
this our modern Roman script, sometimes it is lost you can't recognize it anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you are extremely familiar with Arabic and
Yeah.
Jawi and
Mhm.
modern Malay, then you can recognize, okay, this is actually Arabic, this is actually Persian,
Yeah.
and so you connect to the etymology and the semantic fields of those
Mhm.
meanings, and that helps also and to understand the message, to understand how Prophet Atas is developing his ideas, because he's true to that. In fact, he's saying that language and meaning is language reflects meaning. It reflects it reflects ontology. It reflects
Yeah.
reality. And there's a tendency in the modern times to regard language as a mere vehicle for communication. It's
Mhm.
more or less conventional. It
Only a
no it
medium as a medium.
It's a medium, and it follows conventions, and the
Yeah.
conventions were either dictated by authoritative institutions like, say, DBP or Council of Languages,
Mhm.
or by the dictates of the society, however the society used and understood these terms and language.
And I think
Where
it exposes the language to corruption and
corruption, you want to say,
changing of meaning. Anyway,
yeah.
we are running out of time. Maybe you want to give a 1 minute conclusion.
So okay, I'm just finish my my last point. So
Right.
writing it in Jawi shows that the classical tradition of the Malay language in Jawi is very much capable of expressing very deep and contemporary ideas, and it
Mhm.
challenges the Shukri and his team to how to say secularization,
Yeah.
secularisasi, and to some of these dualism, and then socialism, all these terminologies, and so that makes the language grow. And so as a conclusion, I think I would recommend anyone who are interested in Islamic thought, Malay culture, history, the
Mhm.
Malay language, is interested in Jawi, interested in Malaysia, altogether, to buy this book, Risalah untuk Kaum Muslimin, either in the Roman version or in
Yeah.
the Jawi version, and I really recommend you to really buy the Jawi version
Yeah.
for the significance of it, and also for the artistic expressions of it, and
Yeah.
it has a different way of presentation.
Oh wow. Yeah.
You look at this,
It looks like the what you call as kitab kuning or the kitab Jawi
uh,
of that
uh,
they teach in the Islamic madrasah pondoks,
exactly.
right?
And also you appreciate better the language style that is like you mentioned just now, prose. It's almost like both. It's prose and also poetic at the same time.
Yeah.
So I recommend everyone to get this and try to read it and to try to appreciate it. And if not you, then perhaps your children would appreciate it in the
Yeah.
future. So inshallah. So congratulations to Academy Jawi Malaysia. Shout out to our friend Shukri for a very important contribution. So for further information, you can always contact Academy Jawi Malaysia lah. So I have to
Okay.
say that.
All right.
Thank
Thank you for that, Dr. Ikhwan. I think that wraps up for our episode today, the final episode of the fourth season of the great works of the Muslim world. So
you.
I thank you again, Dr. Ikhwan, and also I thank you. Big thanks to our producer, Batrisha Afrina, and also Radio IKIM for having accommodated and hosted our program, Great Works of the Muslim World. Until next time, I'm Dr. Muhammad Husni Mohd Amin, fellow at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.